Well, good afternoon. I'm not sure it's a good day, but it's a good afternoon. We got a 2014 E250 van, and it's bleeding to death. That's transmission fluid leaking between the engine and the transmission, like the torque converter seal has failed or something. I put a couple of liters of tranny fluid in it on the side of the highway, and it was still low when I started it up. Now, I took the doghouse off. I had to take the job box out because it was in the way. And we can get at the majority of the upper bell housing bolts from here. I'm hoping I can leave the exhaust crossover attached, but we'll see. I'm going to take these bell housing bolts out now and then move the truck forward on the hoist. So there's the upper 4 bell housing bolts out, 2 on this side, 2 on the other side. Disconnect the O2 sensor harness, disconnect the dipstick tube, pull the dipstick out. There's a bracket up there with a 6mm bolt, 10mm head. Take the tranny cooler lines off, they're 1/2 inch. If you take the upper fitting out, then you can get a wrench on the bottom one. I thought they were 13, but they're 1/2 inch actually, which is odd. The fitting is 18mm, but the line is looks like 5/16 with a 1/2 inch flare nut wrench. So we're going to lift it up on the hoist now and take the drive shaft off. Well, there's the bottom side of the tranny. I'm hoping there's enough room to slip this past the tail housing. It has to come back about 1 inch, and it might clear the crossover pipe because I really don't want to undo the crossover. Shifter cable, drive shaft. I'm going to mark it. Not that it really matters, but just to be safe. And we're going to see if we can get the torque converter bolts out from in here. Hopefully. I don't want to take the starter off. Well, there's another access hole right there. So maybe I can get them through that hole. Well, we'll see. So you can get at those torque converter bolts through that cover. 14mm, and I'm using the 14mm serpentine belt socket and then a ratcheting box end. It's nice and short. Ford's always had studs on their torque converters. I don't know why. Makes putting the transmission or engine back in, lining up the bell housing and lining up the torque converter studs somewhat challenging. That's 4 of them. Okay, we'll take the shift cable bracket off and the shift cable off and the electrical harness. And then we'll raise this thing as high as possible on this hoist because of the stuff on top of the roof. I can't raise it to normal height. I'm working on it sitting on a stool. Well, there's the transmission out and the torque converter out. The front pump seal was blown out, as you can see. Now, I don't know why it would do that. I don't know if there's a problem with the pump. If that's a sign that the pump is going. The passage is blocked. I'm going to look it up on the service literature. I don't necessarily want to just throw a seal in there. It does come out of there if you tilt the back of the transmission down. And I took the extension housing seal off to gain 1/4 inch. So I'll replace that seal. But you can get it out without dropping the crossover pipe, but it's challenging. And you do have to take the starter off because the starter is bolted to these 3 bolts here. So I'm going to look up this transmission to see if there's anything common to cause this front pump seal to blow out. So there's the transmission model number, the PFKILO, and the part number is AC2P7000CA. So I decided to pull the pan off this thing and have a look at the inside of the transpan. The oil's a little dark, but it's not burnt. There's normal debris on the magnet. And this is the first time this is apart, I think, because this is a plug that was in the bottom of the pan from the dipstick tube, I think, from the factory. They just push it into the bottom of the pan and it sits in there. So we're going to put a new filter in here. This is the part number for the filter. The pan gasket is reusable. And that's the front torque converter seal. Well, I made sure the drain back hole was free. I blew air through it when I had the pan off and it came out the pan. The vent is free on the transmission. Packed this seal garter spring with grease, transmission assembly lube, and then I dried out the bore with brake cleans and wiped off the outside of the seal with brake cleans and put red Loctite on it. That seal is not very tight in that housing. You can almost push it in with your fingers. So let's hope that this holds. The torque converter snout is nice and smooth. I put a little bit of grease on the inside of this seal now. And we'll put it back together. The bushing looks pristine. My research indicates that it's not uncommon on hot weather for this seal to blow out. It's a weak area on the 4R7, I can't remember what trend is, 4R75. Anyways. Well, there's the tranny back in. Everything's hooked back up. I found if you put the torque converter, one of the bolts on this torque converter at 6 o'clock, it's easier to line up because Ford in their infinite wisdom use studs on the torque converter and they have to go through the flywheel as you're bolting the bell housing bolts up. I put 6 quarts in it. It's probably going to take it closer to 8, but I want to start it and run it. We'll get it up to temperature, check the fluid level. Well, I just got back from about a 20-kilometer road test. Transmission seems to shift fine. It actually took 11 quarts to fill this thing. So I had drained the converter and then obviously changed the filter and taken the pan off. So it's closer to a dry fill, which I think is around 12 quarts. But no leaks. Let's hope that seal stays put. Like I said, I Loctited it in there and it's set for 24 hours before I started it. That's it for now. Thanks for watching.